Alright, hello guys. Today I'm gonna go into a little more like extended topic. So today this topic will be an extended review of why the Americans disliked the British at the time. So we all know Revolutionary War, America broke away from England, but the problem here is we need to look deeper into the reasons. All right. Yes, we all know the 13 colonies that rose up and they, revolted against Britain because of what they did. So we're gonna question: what did Britain do that 13 colonies of their own people had to leave? All right. So yeah, during the start when they colonized it during the 13 colonies, it wasn't that bad. So the Cretan colonies were shaped like this, all right? There were 13 parts. Some of them were small, some of them were really big. But let's not remind that. Some parts are split. As for example, this area was a fertile place. It's also called the bread basket at the time because it was the mass producer of bread. Here, they grew cash crops like, tobacco, sugar, the kind. So, of course, they're like, okay, you don't see anything wrong with that, right? But then, there's a problem. British people, stereotype, they love tea. In real life, they kind of do, but like not as much as, the stereotypes depict them. So, of course, the people in the American colony, their flag was shaped like this at the time before they broke off. So this is their flag. Kind of like the American flag, but like the British area here. So they really had a love for tea, which is fine, right? I mean, British people love tea themselves. But of course, Britain at the time, it was ruled by a monarchy. And monarchies do not usually tend to end well. So, they decided to, they ship tea, all right? This is a tea, all right? They ship tea all the way to America because you got from Africa and stuff. But then they decide to raise the cost of tea without telling the colonists. And of course, when you don't tell people and expect them to pay, they'll get pissed. Obviously, I would too. If you're going to raise the price of something and not tell me, then you can't blame me if I don't pay the correct price. Right? Because you have to tell me beforehand so I can actually know. So I can get a little angry because you raised the price for no reason. But hey, at least I was known so that way I could do what you want. So of course, they got angry. And then the Boston Tea Party happened. They threw a massive British shipment into the sea, which is like a massive insult. And then the British people imposed a bunch of like other taxes, sanctions and stuff, and that made them even more furious. So they declared themselves independent, all right? From then, the Revolutionary War begun. So we all know that the revolutionists won, all right? Well, they also had the help of the one of the Britain's enemies back then, France. Yes, France. The French colonies actually supported them, and at the time it was ruled by a monarchy, which, if it wasn't bad enough for the fact that it had an ancient monarchy type, and and its fundamental stocks were dropping, they spent a ton of money helping the Americans, and the Americans even paid them back. So French was left in a literal crisis, a literal massive crisis for money, all right? It was like catastrophically bad. But still, they helped America win the war. Well, we'll get to France later. All right, so now that the Revolutionary War is over, let's turn to France. So France, great country. We all think it is, all right? So France at the time, it was in a massive economical crisis. Like its economy was just terrible. Why? Because it was ruled by an ancient monarchy temple, right? Here is the king, which is considered a god by divine right. Then the nobles and the priests and stuff. And then everyone else. It's just everyone else, all right? So, of course, this ancient thing would not go on forever. They wanted to like Henry the 16th or so, but eventually revolutionists came in. So of course, French people, they were angry. Taxes were higher. The nobles were living happily with their stock of food while they were starving. Like they couldn't even get bread. Even worse, nobles were dumb. They didn't know how to actually rule. Maybe they even suggested if they didn't have bread, why don't they just eat cake? Because guess what? Flour was not something they had. It was rare to even have flour. So, they started revolutionizing. They started to attack other areas. They formed their own independent government. They attacked the Bastille Fortress and eventually won. Of course, it was split into two groups: revolutionists and loyalists. Loyalists are people that were loyal to the monarchy before it got revolutionized, and they spread into other parts of Europe. And they told the other empires about it. They got scared and invaded France. You know why? Because they were scared that the idea of liberty and human rights would spread to their own empire and ruin it, which kind of makes sense. They want to stay in control. Well, they can stay in control. So of course, they fought back against France. But now for the GOAT, the absolute GOAT. Say hello to Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte defended France for a while until he lost. Belgium, Britain, a lot of other countries. Obviously, his loss was already coming because, of course, he was just as bad as the monarchists he helped destroy. He became an emperor, which is basically now different from the monarchy system, right? All right. So in 1821, he died, and it just kept switching between monarchy and liberty until 1861, when it officially became a republic. So yeah, present history, pretty bloodstained, and left Europe destroyed. But hey, at least the French people have lived in liberty, right? Am I right? Yeah, no.